can't see my arm move.
Why does Australia produce so many deadly animals, each seemingly capable of sending humans to the grave in a matter of minutes? I mean, every continent has its fair share of creatures you don't want to mess with, unless you fancy getting your face rearranged in a split second, but Australia seems to have the highest concentration of lethal caliber wildlife in modern times. I couldn't get that question out of my head, so I decided to research and find every bit of knowledge I could put my hands on in order to finally answer that question. But what I didn't know is that there was no straight answer available, and that it would take me weeks to finally gather enough info and put the puzzle together, resulting in the most challenging video I've ever made. But let's kick it off with the reptiles. The inland taipan, also known as give me your snack! Known to the natives as Dendrobilla and to the scientists as Oxyuranus microlepidotus, this creature is basically a scale-covered death noodle that lives in the semi-arid regions of central eastern Australia. Seeing one of these is like spotting the Grim Reaper, as in, you getting unalived might happen sooner rather than later. It's called the fierce snake, but it doesn't actively hunt you down. Instead, it often plays hide and seek. Now here's the catch. If they call something fierce, yet it acts shy, you better be on your toes. The real terror lies in the deadly punch of its venom, simply the most potent and lethal of all snakes on the globe. Even scarier than sea snakes. Yeah, sea snakes are a thing, and it's just as terrifying as you think. Its venom is so potent that one bite could cross 100 humans off the living list, or 250,000 mice. Yeah, I said 250,000. Our buddy, the inland taipan, and I say buddy so that if I ever go to Australia I don't get my behind wiped by karma, has a particular taste for mammals. And guess what? You're a mammal. Well, it loves anything warm-blooded, and sipping on some warm blood brings him endless joy, thanks to his venom specially crafted to mess up mammals' circulatory systems. Now, nature tries its best to avoid invulnerable beings, so our inland taipan has two mortal enemies, the king brown snake and the parenta. But since, on top of being shy, our inland taipan is also a coward, it avoids them hiding away underground. Well, I'm acting all cool calling it a coward, but make no mistake, when provoked, the Taipanus I'm gonna wreck you allis responds with a series of followed by quick and precise bites, delivering a deadly cocktail right into any disrespectful intruder. Its color varies with the seasons, going from a rich dark brown to a light brownish green, and although its smooth skin and delicate scales might seem inviting to touch, it's better to resist the temptation, unless you'd like a one-way ticket to the Shadow Realm. Anyway, it's not a snake you want to meet in a dark alley, or really anywhere at any time of the day, kinda like these guys. In 1967, a foolish tour guide tried to impress a group of tourists and tried to capture a taipan in Channel Country. You won't be surprised to know that karma itself stepped in immediately, and he got bitten, but refused a not-so-specialized anti-venom out of fear of an allergic reaction. He survived after 4 weeks in the hospital, probably kept alive by destiny so he could tell everyone about his madness and make sure no one else makes the same mistake that he did anytime soon. In 1984, Australian toxicologist Peter Merchant got charmed by a 3-week-old baby taipan that looked cute as heck. But BAM! It bit him once he let his guard down. He became the first human to be treated with specific inland taipan antivenom. A close call. Then, in 2012, a teenager in Kurri, a town far from the taipan's natural territory, got a nasty bite on the shin. They quickly applied a compression bandage and gave him an antivenom shot, miraculously saving him from a permanent nap induced by this scaly villain. In 2013, one dude really pushed his luck with his recklessness. Scott Grant, a reptile handler, got bitten while trying to put a taipan away after a demonstration. Fainting, and a few seizures later, he found himself on a fast track to the hospital, where they gave him an emergency treatment and probably a couple of slaps from doctors fed up with brainless folks like him. And miraculously, he survived. There's more. In 2017, someone tried to photograph a taipan and got way too close, probably to get extra social media likes, thinking he was some kind of brave artist. The result? He got bitten like a rookie and spent 3 days in intensive care at the emergency room, where they had to pump him full of 3 doses of antivenom to keep him kicking. But understand this, not dying doesn't mean you're off the hook. You're physically scarred for life and will have muscular and cardiac health problems that will always remind you of your encounter with the darkness. Because this snake's venom is a mix of neurotoxins, hemotoxins, myotoxins, and maybe even nephrotoxins, all concocted to ensure a swift and painfully agonizing death. Typoxin, an element in its venom, is one of the most potent neurotoxins ever discovered. I want your brain to really get this. The clinical effects of an inland taipan bite are severe and often fatal if left untreated. Paralysis, coagulopathy, kidney failure, muscle damage, all accompanied by local pain and an array of unpleasant symptoms. Without treatment, if you close your eyes then open them, you're facing Zeus. Much more aggressive is the brown snake, Australia's deadliest snake and the second most venomous snake in the world, behind the inland taipan. Why is it the deadliest if its venom is a tad less potent? Simply because the brown snake doesn't hide from you. It lives where there are humans, not in the depths of the desert like some weaklings. A little anecdote, it's fast enough to catch up to you even if you run in the opposite direction at full speed. You won't escape karma if this snake decides to punish you. Pseudonaja textilis, for those in the know, is a long tube of danger. First described in 1854 by a trio of French naturalists, André, Gabriel, and Auguste, this snake has chosen to adopt a deceptively slender appearance. It makes you believe it's a lightweight before stretching out to 7 feet and giving you a run for your money. Its coat, a varied palette from pale brown to black, conceals its darker side, but only until you notice its cream yellow belly, often adorned with orange or gray spots. It prefers farmlands in the outskirts of urban areas because that's where its favorite food, the mouse, resides. Not very picky about its habitats, the eastern brown snake simply avoids dense forests because, once again, it doesn't want to hide. It wants to see its victim from afar and drool in anticipation as it approaches its future dinner. Its venom, naturally, is a molecular cocktail of death. A catastrophe for the circulatory system, causing coagulopathy, hemorrhage, and cardiac arrest. One of its star components is the prothrombinase complex pseudotrin C, which breaks down prothrombin, a very scientific way of saying it turns your blood into water. Water's fine, but this isn't fun at all. Moreover, it has a taste for pets, because as soon as it spots a punk-ass dog barking too loudly, it approaches and takes it out, sending it into a galactic-level paralysis. In terms of its track record, since 2020 it has caused the funeral of 6 Australians, both teenagers and adults. That tells you how much of a pure menace this snake is. Now let's talk about the angriest, the saltwater crocodile. This scaly monster rules the salty waters, brackish swamps, and freshwater rivers, ranging from the eastern shores of India to the far reaches of northern Australia. The saltwater crocodile is a massive beast, simply the largest living reptile on Earth. Males can reach a mind-boggling length of 20 feet with a weight ranging from 2,200 to 3,300 pounds. So if you ever run into one, ask the croc for a couple of minutes to call your loved ones and say your goodbyes, because after that, it's game over. They're known to ambush their prey before giving them an underwater POV, or just swallowing it whole, and this prey range from sharks to crustaceans, various amphibians, reptiles, birds, any mammal they can find, and of course, us humans. To them, a good human is a devoured human. Their massive bodies contrast with the leaner bodies of other crocs, which had led to unverified assumptions that it might be an alligator. It's not an alligator, it's a living nightmare, plain and simple. The juveniles, with their pale, yellowish black striped tint, start out cute before maturing into something less cute. The size of saltwater crocs increases cubically with length, which explains why a 19-foot individual weighs more than twice that of a 16-foot one. The largest known specimen met a tragic end in a fishing net in Papua New Guinea in 1979. With a dried skin measuring 20 feet, plus a missing tail tip, it's estimated that the monster could have measured 22 feet when you account for the retraction and the missing tail tip. But that's not all! The big guys' propensity for swimming long distances at sea has allowed them to make surprise appearances far from their usual territory, all the way to Fiji. These rugged creatures fiercely defend their territory, which is why, during the dry season, they move towards estuaries, forcing the young ones to clear out and make their way into the ocean, thus increasing the species' distribution and causing havoc in various places. Attacks on humans are not uncommon at all. In fact, as I mentioned, the saltwater crocodile has a well-established reputation for enjoying human flesh. Unlike alligators, where some level of coexistence is possible, the only recommended policy for saltwater crocs is to avoid their habitat at all costs. Their territory is not a place for a leisurely swim, as the no swimming warning from the Northern Territory Parks and Wildlife Commission aptly reminds. In the rest of the world, exact data on attacks is scarce, but it's known that around 100 people in Indonesia, the Philippines, and possibly India become croc cookies every year. In Australia, 1 or 2 fatal incidents are reported each year, which should tell you to be cautious around any body of water that looks suspicious. Despite their reputation, many saltwater crocs are wary of humans and prefer to keep their distance. However, some attacks seem to be more territorial than predatory, with crocs attacking anything that enters their domain. Encounters that, if you're lucky, will leave you with nothing more than a good scare. The danger posed by saltwater crocs is so real that in 2018 in Indonesia, a crowd of 600 people slaughtered 292 crocs in retaliation after a man was devoured. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Let's stay in the water and check out the marine menace. In the shark world, we've got the great white shark, or Carcharodon carcharias, which is basically the ultimate bloodthirsty killer of the deep. The great white shark is a killer that roams the coastal surface waters of all major oceans. This sea creature is best known for its mind-boggling size, and unlike saltwater crocs, it's not just the males that are massive, it's the ladies too. Imagine this, the largest recorded female measured 16 feet long and weighed about 4,400 pounds when fully grown. That's a big old lady right there. And these creatures aren't just masses of muscle and teeth. They can live up to 70 years or more, ensuring they rack up a maximum body count before kicking the bucket. It feasts on marine mammals like young dolphins, or adult ones if they're out and about without their crew, and don't hesitate to surprise eat another shark when the opportunity arises. The great white holds the record for the highest number of reported and identified unprovoked attacks on humans in the water. But strangely, we learn that humans aren't exactly its preferred meat. That's because a shark's digestion is too slow to handle the high ratio of bones to muscle and fat in humans. So, in most recorded shark bite incidents, great whites break off contact after the first bite. Deaths are generally caused by blood loss from the initial bite, rather than the loss of critical organs or total consumption. However, some researchers have suggested that the reason the death rate is low isn't because sharks don't like human flesh, but because humans tend to escape after the first bite. In the 1980s, it was noted that divers who were bitten by great whites while diving alone were usually at least partially consumed, while those who followed the buddy system were usually saved by their companion. They might not be big fans of us, but once we're there and bleeding, why not devour us whole? After all, you shouldn't waste food. That's the perfect saying for another nightmare, the bull shark, Carcharodon lucus, which lounges around in warm, shallow waters along coasts and in rivers worldwide. Its liking for raw aggression is legendary, especially in freshwater and brackish. Bull sharks are known to swim up rivers and have been spotted as far inland as Alton, Illinois, on the Mississippi River, about 680 miles from the ocean, all just to mess up unsuspecting victims who dare think they're safe from the sea. They've even been found in Lake Nicaragua. There's just no safe haven anywhere. So much so that one was seen swimming in the flooded streets of Brisbane, Australia during the Queensland floods of 2010 through 2011. The bull shark is a top predator in the marine food chain, capable of gobbling up a variety of prey. Its menu primarily consists of bony fish and small sharks, including other bull sharks and rays. But this gourmet isn't exclusive. It can happily snack on turtles, birds, dolphins, land mammals, crustaceans, and echinoderms. As a true sneaky customer, it hunts in murky waters where it's harder for its prey to spot the shark coming. Interactions with humans are often terrifying because bull sharks tend to frequent shallow waters, are naturally ultra-territorial, and have zero tolerance for provocation, especially coming from big-brain monkeys. Consequently, they're potentially more dangerous to humans than any other shark species, and it shows. They rank among the top 3 shark species, along with the tiger shark and the great white shark, for most likely to take a bite out of humans, either out of hunger or just for the thrill. Now comes the one that's talked about less but is equally a creature which sees humans as nothing but a good meal, the tiger shark, or Galiocerdo cuvier. It's a big-time predator with females capable of reaching over 16 feet in length. You can find them in many tropical and temperate waters, especially around the islands of the Central Pacific. Its name comes from the dark stripes on its body resembling a tiger's pattern, though they fade with age. The tiger shark is a solitary hunter, primarily nocturnal. It's known to have the broadest diet spectrum amongst all sharks, as crustaceans, fish, birds, squids, turtles, sea snakes, and even smaller sharks are on the menu. It also has the reputation of being the garbage can of the sea, swallowing various inanimate objects that happen to find their way into its stomach. The teeth of the tiger shark are unique, with very sharp serrations and a distinct tip that points sideways, designed to slice through flesh, bones, and other hard substances like turtle shells, which it shreds to pieces. Like most sharks, its teeth are continually replaced with new ones throughout its life to keep them sharp, as a warm welcome to its prey. These creatures often frequent shallow reefs, harbors, and canals, flirting with human fate. They also enjoy the freshwater influence of river mouths and other runoff-rich waters where they can find some defenseless beings. Human interactions seem to peak between September and November, during which female tiger sharks migrate around islands to give birth to their offspring. Maternal instinct doesn't seem to be taken lightly in the shark world. Just last year, in June 2023, a tiger shark decided to taste a 23-year-old Russian swimmer who unfortunately met his end at the hands or teeth of this sea predator, which showed no mercy whatsoever. Let's switch gears to jellyfish, particularly box jellyfish or cubozoans, which are a family of mushy invertebrate creatures known for their cubic body, hence the name. Some species are equipped with potent venom delivered on contact with their tentacles. Stings from a few species like Chironex fleckeri, Carukia barnesi, and Malokingi are extremely painful and often fatal to humans. Depending on the species, an adult box jellyfish can measure up to 8 inches along each side of the box, 12 inches diameter, and the tentacles can reach up to 10 feet in length. Its weight? 4.4 pounds. There are about 15 tentacles at each corner. Each tentacle has around 500,000 cnidocytes containing nematocysts, microscopic harpoon-like mechanisms that inject venom into the victim. In terms of behavior, the box jellyfish, driven by an insatiable appetite, is a powerful swimmer that actively hunts its prey, small fish, rather than drifting like most jellyfish. Not all box jellyfish are deadly, but some are, and in fact, they are the most venomous and deadly creatures in the world. Well, I say that, but even those that aren't deadly can make you cry and scream for mommy if they get a good grip on you. In Australia, researcher Hugo Flecker delved into the mystery of swimmers meeting their demise in puzzling circumstances. He revealed that the box jellyfish, later named Chironex fleckeri, was the culprit. And in 1945, he described another type of envenomation he called Irukandji syndrome, caused by another species of box jellyfish, Carukia barnesi. It's Chironex fleckeri that holds the record in Australia, with stings that can cause cardiac arrest in just 2 minutes. 2 short minutes! Barely enough time to microwave a meal and take a bite, and you're done for! Since 1883, it has caused at least 79 fatal encounters, although most encounters result in mild envenomation, meaning excruciating pain, but you'll get better afterward. Recent victims are often children due to their reduced body mass, like a 17-year-old boy in February 2021 after one swim too many on the Cape York coast. Special mention for Irukandji jellyfish. These tiny creatures with an adult size of about a cubic centimeter or 0.4 cubic feet are both the smallest and one of the most venomous jellyfish in the world. They inhabit the marine waters of northern Australia and are so minuscule that they are impossible to see while swimming normally. Their defense method is a real nightmare for humans as they shoot their venomous darts into their victim, causing the Irukandji syndrome, which can be fatal. The name comes from the Irukandji people, natives of the coastal region north of Cairns, Queensland. Guess how you prove a jellyfish is dangerous? Well, you get stung by it, of course, for science! To prove that the jellyfish was the cause of the Irukandji syndrome, Jack Barnes captured one of them in 1964 and intentionally got stung, along with his 9-year-old son and a sturdy young lifeguard. They all became seriously ill but survived, thus proving the dangerousness of this tiny creature. His 9-year-old son, though? This was some form of child abuse, wasn't it? Anyway, in 2015, researchers from North Queensland discovered that the Irukandji jellyfish was actively hunting its prey too. The discovery reveals a darker side of this already feared creature. Nothing random here, it sees you and wants to take your soul. Especially considering that, despite being small, its tentacles can still grow up to 3 feet long. An attack from this jellyfish causes such intense pain that it's described as being 100 times more powerful than a cobra's bite, and 1,000 times stronger than a tarantula's. Not 2 times more, not 10, but 100 and 1,000 times more. Their venom is so potent that it was linked to the deaths of 5 tourists in Australia over a 3-month period, all victims showing typical signs of Irukandji syndrome, delayed onset of the illness, and highly visible distress. To put it more clearly, you're overwhelmed by a desire to unalive yourself. So intense is your absolute agony. It's a painful cocktail of excruciating muscle cramps in the arms and legs, severe pain in the back and kidneys, a burning sensation of the skin and face, headaches, nausea, restlessness, sweating, vomiting, increased heart rate, and blood pressure. Nothing your doctor would ever prescribe. Unlike most jellyfish, the Irukandji has venomous darts, not only on its tentacles, but also on its bell. No way to avoid the damage. It's not playing normal tag, it's tag, ha ha ha, you're dead. The waters around Palm Island off the northern coast of Queensland saw an increased incidence of Irukandji stings. In 2020, 23 stings, including 7 requiring hospitalizations for Irukandji syndrome, were reported. The Irukandji, which never seems to stop with its crazy antics, has the terrifying ability to shoot venomous harpoons from the end of its tentacles. Can you imagine that? Usually it's if the tentacles or its head touches you, but it can actually aim and shoot? Nah, that's some BS. I'm moving on to the next ones. The Conus Geographus, or cone snail, seems like it would be all nice and chill, but it's the complete opposite. It's a ruthless predator that hangs out in the reefs of the tropical Indo-Pacific, hunting down small, unsuspecting fish that swim there. While all cone snails hunt and kill their prey with venom, the venom of the Conus Geographus is so potent that it can kill a human. Doesn't seem like there were any humans to kill under the ocean, but the Conus couldn't care less. This dude is all about warm waters. It cruises around the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean near Chagos, Reunion, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mozambique, and Tanzania. And it's right at home in the reefs of the Indo-Pacific region, especially off the coast of Australia. As a fish eater that hides in the sediments of shallow reefs, it lies in ambush for small fish. Like other cone snails, it shoots a modified harpoon-like tooth filled with venom into its prey's behind, and then it reels the prey in to be devoured. Extremely dangerous, the Conus Geographus is also known as the cigarette snail, a dark humor that implies that if someone gets stung by this creature, the victim will have just enough time to smoke one before they kick the bucket. In reality, even the most venomous cones take about 1 to 5 hours to take down a healthy human, though medical attention has to be quick because without it, death is almost certain. Symptoms include intense localized pain, swelling, numbness, tingling, and vomiting. Symptoms can appear immediately or be delayed by several days. In severe cases, muscle paralysis is observed, along with vision changes and respiratory failure that can send you to the morgue. The stonefish is a whole different kind of nightmare. They're known as the most venomous fish out there, and their stings can easily put a human heart to sleep in an irreversible way. primarily marine creatures. Although some species live in rivers, most of them hang out in the coral reefs near the tropical oceans of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. These creatures have potent neurotoxins secreted from glands located at the base of their needle-like dorsal spines, which get up when they get bothered by some fool who dares to disturb a stonefish. The issue is that the common name of the species, the stonefish, comes from its gray and mottled camouflage, similar to the color of a stone. So they can't stand being bothered, but they camouflage like pros, and after that they get mad and give you a dose of venom? Where's the logic in that? In humans, their stings bring tears of pain, causing respiratory weakness, damage to the cardiovascular system, give seizures and paralysis until the human stops existing. And the danger isn't just in the water. The stonefish, in one last act of defiance against nature, can survive out of the water for up to 24 hours. Their resemblance to rocks or coral makes them even sneakier, because you can be out and about on the beach enjoying the view, and there, because the tide was high and it got stuck on the sand, you step on it, and bam! Game over. To tell you the truth, stonefish antivenom is the second most administered antivenom in Australia, right after the annual subscription to box jellyfish venom. The amount of antivenom needed depends on whether the stonefish was nice to you with its spine, or if it went with a goat-like performance. In contrast to the sneaky camouflage of the stonefish, the blue-ringed octopus has bright colors so that you can hightail it if you ever see one, and that's pretty cool. Despite its small size, between 4.7 and 7.9 inches, this octopus is far from being a softie. It grabs and devours small crustaceans, including crabs, shrimps, and other marine nibbles. How? It pounces on its prey, seizes it with its arms, and pulls it towards its mouth. With its horny beak, it pierces the tough exoskeleton of the crab or shrimp, releasing its venom. The venom paralyzes the muscles necessary for the prey's movement, and once it's caught, it's game over. The venom of the blue-ringed octopus is a deadly concoction containing a neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin. This little marine terror carries enough venom to tackle 26 adult humans in a matter of minutes. And the toxic cherry on top? Their bites are tiny and often painless. Many victims don't realize they've been envenomed until respiratory depression and paralysis kick in. Currently, there's no anti-venom available, making each interaction with this octopus the equivalent of Russian roulette. The toxicity of this octopod is produced in the posterior salivary gland by endosymbiotic bacteria. Effects can include nausea, respiratory arrest, heart failure, severe and sometimes total paralysis, blindness, and can lead to death within minutes if left untreated. Death is usually due to suffocation caused by diaphragm paralysis, especially if you're still in the water. You'll simply drown. Back on solid ground, watch where you step, because on the arachnids and insects front, we've got the Sydney funnel web spider, or Atrax robustus, and it's just as vicious as its name implies. Hailing from the Australian east coast, this spider likes to hang out within a 62-mile radius of Sydney, where it can indulge in its favorite hobby, messing with humans. With a body measuring between 0.4 and 2 inches, the funnel web spider is a medium to large sized critter, but don't be fooled. Its small size doesn't make it any less of a formidable opponent. Its dark color, ranging from blue-black to dark brown, might just be the last thing you see if you're not careful. This smooth and shiny-looking spider has finger-like structures at the end of its abdomen, which almost seem to invite you to nature's deadly dance. It rules over Sydney, extending north to the Central Coast, south to the Illawarra region, and west to the Blue Mountains. It likes to hang out in humid microhabits, such as under logs and greenery. The venom of the funnel web spider contains a compound called delta-atracotoxin, an ion channel inhibitor that makes the venom highly toxic to humans and other primates. However, other mammals can usually escape it as their nervous systems are insensitive to this venom. But here's the ultimate irony. There were no primates in Australia when this spider first made its venom. It's purely random that it's highly toxic to primates, but not to other mammals. Truly a spider sent by karma itself. When it bites, the funnel web spider doesn't hold back. It gives a full dose of venom, often striking multiple times to make sure you get the message that the spider is in charge here. And to add insult to injury, although the males are smaller and have a shorter lifespan than the females, their venom is more potent. They're out looking for females, and if you happen to be in their way, you will be sent the hell out of there. Symptoms? Oh, just difficulty breathing, blood pressure fluctuations peaking in severe hypertension, teary eyes, salivation, muscle twitching, and then it's lights out. The Guinness World Records has honored our spider friend as the world's most venomous, defining most venomous as having the most toxic venom to humans, although in the past, this title was awarded to the Brazilian wandering spider. Let's talk about the one with the slightly more glamorous name, the Australian Black Widow. This eight-legged creature, known as Latrodectus hasselti, is the troublemaker of the spider family. It's native to the deserts of southern Australia or Western Australia, but decided to go global, settling all over Australia, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, and even beyond. The adult female, with her spherical black body marked by a prominent red stripe on her abdomen and a red-orange hourglass-shaped mark on the underside, is easy to recognize. She measures about 0.4 inches long, while the male, much smaller, is only 0.1 inches long. Mostly nocturnal, she likes to set up camp in warm and sheltered places, often near or even inside human residences. She weaves her web in a rather haphazard manner. She doesn't care much about artistry. It's enough to catch and devour insects or even spiders and small vertebrates that get caught in it. She has a rather dramatic way of killing her prey. She often starts by dousing her victim with what looks like super glue, immobilizing the prey by sticking its limbs and appendages to her own body. She then covers the victim with silk, bites it several times, and carries it back to her lair. Sometimes a potentially dangerous victim can be left to struggle for hours until it's weak enough to safely jump on it. The danger is that her venom is primarily neurotoxic to vertebrates, causing a condition called latrodectism in humans. It starts with pain around the bite sites, which usually becomes severe and progresses along the bitten limb and persists for more than 24 hours. Generalized symptoms like nausea, vomiting, headaches, and restlessness can also occur and indicate severe envenomation, leading to destabilization of cell membranes and degranulation of nerve endings, sending children and the elderly on a one-way ticket to darkness. Fortunately, an antivenom has been available since 1956. It's usually Mrs. Black Widow who's the culprit. Mr. Black Widow is considered too small to cause much harm, although a few rare cases have been reported. Most bites occur between December and April during the hottest months, often in the afternoon or evening. And since she's more of a stay-at-home type, bites usually happen when you put your hand or some other part of your body a bit too close to the spider, like when you get up and forget to check the inside of your shoes. I feel for you if you're not into spiders, so let's check out some birds, where there are also creatures that can give humans a run for their money. The southern cassowary, Cassowarius, is one of 3 cassowaries in existence, and they're giants that roam the forests of Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and northeastern Australia. Our friend wears stiff and spiky black plumage, a blue face with a long neck, red on the cape, and 2 red wattles that dangle around its throat. It has a sort of horned brown helmet on its head, which measures between 5 and 6.7 inches in height. Its beak can reach a length of 3.5 to 17.5 inches. In these birds, both sexes have identical plumage, but the female is the boss, larger with a longer helmet, a bigger beak, and more colorful bare parts. Juveniles, on the other hand, have longitudinally striped brown plumage. The 3-toed feet of this bird are thick and powerful, armed with a dagger-like claw that can measure up to 4.7 inches on the inner toe. It's the 3rd heaviest bird on Earth after the Somali ostrich and the common ostrich, with a maximum estimated height of 6 feet 2 inches. Females are the heavyweights, averaging nearly 37 pounds. The southern cassowary has a reputation of being dangerous to humans and animals, and is often considered aggressive. These birds can jump quite high and deliver masterful kicks with their sharp claws. However, deadly encounters with southern cassowaries are rare. Only 2 human deaths have been reported since 1900. A historical study from 2003 on 221 cassowary attacks showed that 150 were directed at humans. All that's to say, when a cassowary is around, don't act tough for no reason, and especially keep your disrespect to a minimum. Then there's the emu, or Dromaeus novaehollandiae, this gigantic Australian bird that doesn't fly but knows how to make its presence felt on the ground. A distant cousin of the ostrich, it ranks just behind in terms of height, but still holds quite a few records on the island continent, where it reigns supreme amongst native birds. The emu, with its soft brown plumage, long necks, and legs, is more or less the same height as the southern cassowary. Its powerful legs allow it to run at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, so if they chase you, you're done. Behind that placid face hides a war machine. Its powerful legs aren't just for running, they're armed with sharp claws ready to tear into the neck of anyone who dares to threaten the bird or its offspring. The mating season between May and June is particularly perilous. Females fight for the attention of males who, once courted, incubate the eggs and protect the young with fierce determination. When it comes to predators, the emu isn't one to back down. Faced with its archenemy, the dingo, the emu adopts an aerial combat tactic. It leaps into the air, avoiding the dingo's sharp jaws, and upon landing, it delivers kicks that wouldn't be out of place in the techniques of the greatest martial arts masters. Oh, and if you're a farmer in Australia, watch out! Emus aren't afraid to breach your fences to feast on your crops, and if you think you can chase them away, think twice. The most extreme example of this interspecies conflict is the famous Emu War of 1932 in Western Australia. Emus, drawn to the lands of Chandler and Walgulan during a drought, caused considerable damage to fences and crops. Humans, in a desperate move, called in the army to fend off these unwanted guests with machine guns, but the emus, with their avian intelligence, largely evaded the hunters, making the military operation quite embarrassing. Let's wrap up our tour of Australia's wild and scary beings with the mammals. The kangaroo, that bouncing Australian emblem with powerful legs and a gaze that always makes it seem a little bit lost, belongs to the family Macropodidae, which literally translates to Bigfoot. They could have also called them Bigfoot in your face. The term kangaroo encompasses 4 distinct marsupials, but today we're focusing on the largest and most well-known of them, the red kangaroo. Red, the color of love, passion, and the blood that spills from victims after a few kicks. The kangaroo is a peaceful herbivore, as long as you respect its personal space. The kangaroo's tail is like a muscular pendulum, or a third leg that helps it maintain balance while delivering a well-placed kick able to knock you out. You might have heard that kangaroos are friendly to humans, though. That's true to a certain extent. Lulu, an eastern gray kangaroo, became famous in 2003 for saving a farmer who had a broken branch hit his head and had fallen unconscious. Alerted by Lulu's incessant barking, the farmer's wife came to see what was happening and found her husband under the massive branch. Rescued by emergency services, he survived. But for every Lulu, there's a red kangaroo ready to deliver a deadly elbow to an old man in his garden, as was the case in Australia in 2022. And how can we not mention the platypus, that semi-aquatic creature, a strange mix of duck, otter, beaver, with a little dash of snake? Hailing from the freshwater regions of eastern Australia and Tasmania, the platypus is one of the only 2 mammals that lay eggs, with the other being the echidna. And on top of that, it's one of the few mammals equipped with venom. Because, of course it is. Its unusual appearance initially dumbfounded European naturalists of the 18th century who, after examining a specimen, concluded that it was a hoax. They thought someone had sewn a duck's bill onto a beaver's body just to mess with them. The most fearsome feature of the platypus lies in the venomous spurs of the males, located on their hind legs. These spurs can inflict extremely intense pain, enough to make a grown man cry, or put a smaller animal into technical knockout. Edema rapidly develops around the wound and gradually spreads through the affected limb, potentially evolving into exquisite hyperalgesia, increased sensitivity to pain, persisting for days, even months. It's as if the platypus is offering you a free pass to a pain festival, and believe me, you wouldn't want to attend. The venom is primarily composed of proteins similar to defensins produced by the immune system, 3 of which are unique to the platypus. In other animals, defensins exterminate pathogenic bacteria and viruses, but in the platypus, they transform into a venomous defense weapon against predators. The venom is produced in the male's crural glands, which are kidney-shaped alveolar glands. The female platypus, on the other hand, has rudimentary spur buds that don't develop. They fall off before the end of their first year and lacks functional crural glands. The female platypus, on the other hand, has rudimentary spur buds that don't develop. They fall off before the end of their first year and lacks functional crural glands. Venom production increases in males during the mating season, and it might be used to assert dominance. It's not the kind of creature you want to mess with during a leisurely swim in Australian waters, but then again, if you're swimming in Australian waters without protection, you're clearly tempting karma. Now that we've covered all these adorable Australian animals, each more dangerous than the last, why on earth did they all gather in Australia? Chapter 2, 2.0 Introduction, presenting Australia's features. To grasp why Australia boasts so much deadly wildlife, let's characterize it. It's a land isolated from the rest of the world, so vast that it's an island continent, with a very hot and even arid climate for a good part of the island, which includes a massive desert, and humans only settled there relatively recently in history. Now, let's see why each of these elements is significant. Isolation. Let's rewind 180 million years into the past. At that time, Africa, South America, India, Australia, Antarctica, and the Arabian Peninsula were united in the supercontinent known as Gondwana. Enormous tectonic plates began shifting on the Earth's molten mantle, leading to the gradual breakup of the landmass. Africa and South America detached first, followed by India and Madagascar 40 million years later. Australia and Antarctica eventually separated about 100 million years ago. Moreover, since its inception about 180 million years ago, the process continues. Australia sits on the world's fastest moving continental tectonic plate, drifting northward by about close to 3 inches each year, meaning it will eventually join Asia. But that's a story for another time. Island continent. Australia, both a country and a continent, is larger than Europe in terms of land area if you exclude Russia. When a territory is so vast, you can expect that the climate won't be the same everywhere, and that's important. Located in the southern hemisphere, its seasons are reversed compared to North America and Europe, so when it's winter up north, it's summer in Australia. Most of Australia experiences 4 seasons, while the tropical north alternates between a dry season and a wet season. Summer extends from December to March, average temperature of 84 degrees Fahrenheit, autumn from March to May, winter from June to August, average temperature of around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and spring from September to November. Australia is often associated with a hot climate, especially during the summer. Desert. The climate in the Australian desert, often referred to as the outback on maps, is very hot and dry. In summer, the outback sees days where temperatures can whip your skin, soaring up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Therefore, Australian animals have to be extremely adapted and get extremely good at capturing prey, especially since in the Australian desert, conditions can be unpredictable. It might not rain for years, or torrential rains can lead to floods, forming salt lakes like Lake Erie. Recent human history. The ancestors of Aboriginal Australians began arriving from Southeast Asia some 50,000 to 65,000 years ago during the last ice age. They sailed across unpredictable seas, set foot on the Red Continent, and wove a tapestry of nearly 250 distinct linguistic groups that still existed when Europeans arrived a few hundred years ago. By etching the echoes of their voices into tree bark and the breath of time, they preserved some of the oldest and continuous artistic and religious traditions known on this blue planet. All of this is grandiose, but it also explains something. The human presence tends to give the local predators a run for their money. Not only do humans deplete their food sources by hunting almost anything that moves, but in conflicts, humans have the unfortunate tendency to wipe out anything that offers even the slightest resistance. So, generally speaking, there are fewer dangerous animals in areas where humans have lived for a long time. Now let's dive into animal families one by one and see how we ended up with these animals populating the Australian lands and seas. The snake case. To understand why snakes in Australia are some of the deadliest on Earth, let's go back 180 million years when Australia was still taking geological selfies with Antarctica, Africa, South America, and India, forming Gondwana. Today, each of these lands has venomous snakes, except Antarctica, which is now way too frozen for any snake to live there. Scientific wisdom once assumed that venomous snakes existed all over Gondwana, but the latest findings tell a different tale. It turns out that there were no snakes in Australia about 20 million years ago. Australia might have been too far south in Gondwana to have snakes. Today, scientists generally agree that a sea snake arrived in Australia less than 20 million years ago. Two important things to note: this snake was venomous, and at that time, there were no venomous snakes in Australia. So it was able to take over the entire island, and its descendants over time evolved into different species. And since they all come from a common venomous ancestor, the one that arrived by sea, they're all venomous, and might have even become more venomous over time because that was the best way to outdo the snake next door. Be more venomous in order to defend yourself better. For those wondering, there are indeed non-venomous snakes in Australia, but they arrived in Australia after the venomous one. Scientists aren't thrilled with this simplistic explanation, but for now, that's all they've got. And venomous snakes had an advantage. The prey on this continent wasn't an easy meal. They had their own tricks to escape the jaws of death, so the venom's arms race began. Snakes had to adapt their venom to overcome the increasingly robust defenses of their prey. It was a kind of biochemical Cold War, where every venom upgrade could mean a ticket to the next meal. In this evolution theater, snakes in the family Elapidae, or cobra family, to which our pioneering sea snake belonged, became the dominant group on the continent. Australia's hot climate was also a factor. In hot climates, species diversity is often higher, and competition for food is fierce. Furthermore, high temperatures accelerate chemical reactions, making venom even more effective, a significant advantage in the cruel game of survival, especially in vast territories where prey hides from the sun. So snakes couldn't afford to miss their prey when they caught it. It had to breathe its last breath almost instantly, and it needed not to be able to harm the snake in revenge. And that's how snakes in Australia likely became the most venomous snakes in the world. Arachnids and insects. Spiders and venomous insects might have been a part of the same mess. Dry land, prey to eat, strong venom, and if you don't want to send your victim to heaven but simply feed on its life essence, you get the paralysis tick, which sounds like something out of a horror movie, and honestly, it kind of is. When it bites, it injects a toxin that can cause allergic reactions, paralysis, and in severe cases, death. The goal isn't death, but the tick isn't the best at chemistry. Shit happens. The mammals case. Looking at kangaroos, you might reasonably wonder why this beast stands 6 feet 5 inches tall, packed with muscles, and harbors aggressive rage towards any passerby it can't wait to tear apart. Some folks might even say it doesn't make sense, because in Australia, except for the dingo introduced by humans, there aren't many predators bothering kangaroos. What these folks forget is that kangaroo families have existed for millions of years, and as for predators, there might not be many today, but there were plenty in the past, and even relatively recently. The Australian continent once hosted an impressive lineup of predators like Megalania, a monstrous 27 feet, 1,545-pound lizard that went extinct around 40,000 years ago, which means that Australia's first aboriginals coexisted with it. Then there were the Mechasuchus, terrestrial crocs about 2 meters long, who, I repeat, were terrestrial and didn't go into the water. They hunted their victims on land, probably kangaroos. We can also mention Thylacoleo carnifex, the marsupial lion, which likely weighed 286 pounds of deadly delight and probably devoured kangaroos for breakfast. Not to mention the recently extinct thylacine, gone in 1936, the last real predator of kangaroos. Faced with all of this, kangaroos had to arm themselves to survive, or they'd get sent straight to heaven's gates. Even their way of moving is bulletproof. With elastic tendons in their hind legs, they can cover great distances by jumping with insane energy efficiency, a necessity in a country where food can be scarce and a 27-foot demon could appear out of nowhere and try to get you. By the way, other kangaroo species existed, some massive, like Procoptodon goliath, which weighed 530 pounds, compared to the red kangaroo we know, which is around 198 pounds. As for the platypus, it needed to defend itself against all those pesky predators, so ultimately the development of venom in the platypus makes some sense, considering how defenseless it would otherwise be. 2.5. The bird case. When it comes to birds, let's talk about the cassowary. For many, the evolution of the cassowary is a mystery wrapped in colorful feathers and a symbol of violence. The cassowary looks like a living dinosaur that dodged extinction. They belong to the ratites order, those giant birds that could tear you apart but prefer strutting around on solid ground rather than bothering with flying. Well, when I say could tear you apart, I mean everyone except for the kiwi, but evolution did it dirty. The others though, like ostriches and such, you better watch out or you'll regret it. They populate all the southern continents except Antarctica, a legacy of their Gondwana supercontinent origin. For those who think that ratites are brainless, that flying is super cool and giving it up is just weird, biologists have something to tell you. Flying is the most energy-intensive form of animal movement. Giving up flight allowed cassowaries and their ratite cousins to grow much larger than other birds. Again, I'm repeating myself here, except for the kiwi. Poor little fella. The closest relative to cassowaries is the emu. One of them probably insulted the other's cooking skills, leading to them diverging from a common ancestor about 25 to 30 million years ago. Faced with the same ultra-dangerous predators, you have no choice but to be dangerous yourself with anyone who gets too close, especially if you have little ones to protect. Who knows if that noise in the woods isn't coming from a giant angry lizard? Maybe you'd be able to tell the difference, but the cassowary prefers to draw its claws first and sort things out later. Anyway, why are you getting so close to it? Either you're brainless or you have bad intentions. In both cases, according to the cassowary, you deserve what's coming for you. Alright, that's all fine and understandable for land animals, but what about the ones in the ocean? They shouldn't give a hoot about Gondwana whatever, they're in the water. In the oceans, they can go wherever they want. They're not stuck like land animals, those bunch of losers living on solid ground. So why do they choose Australian waters? What attracts them to come and whip the souls of innocent victims around this country continent? Some Australians will tell you they don't only live in Australia, so hush, as if that was enough to answer the question. Let's dig a little deeper to see what mystery awaits when we look into the exact habitats of these marine creatures. As I explain this, try to see the common thread between all of this. Let's start with box jellyfish, those venomous slap givers that are floaty creatures that prefer the warm tropical waters of the Indo-Pacific, although they sometimes venture to more distant shores like California, the Mediterranean, Japan, South Africa, and New Zealand. They love the waters near the coast and are often found lounging in mangroves, coral reefs, kelp forests, and sandy beaches. Next, we have the great white shark, an expert in the bite and grave combo, which frequents coastal and offshore waters with temperatures ranging from 53 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It's often seen hanging around in the United States, South Africa, Japan, Oceania, Chile, and the Mediterranean, just to name a few. In fact, they live all over the world. The tiger shark, another lovable menace, loves tropical and subtropical waters and tends to follow warm currents. It loves the deep waters bordering the coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific. Then there's the bull shark. It's not just a shark that likes warm waters, it's a daring explorer that swims in rivers and lakes, sometimes even in flooded streets in Australia. And it's not the only one that loves fresh water. The saltwater crocodile, another resident of the Indo-Pacific, likes to lounge in coastal mangroves, river deltas, and freshwater rivers, ranging from India to Australia. The cone snail, or Conus Geographus, counts more than 900 species, mainly found in the western Indo-Pacific region. The stonefish, on the other hand, is a stealthy inhabitant of coral reefs near the Pacific and Indian Oceans. As for the blue-ringed octopus, it goes from Japan to the waters of southern Australia, hiding in crevices or under rocks during the day, emerging at night to hunt. Did you, notice something? All these animals are not only in Australia, that's for sure, but they all share one common area, much larger than the Australian coasts, the Indo-Pacific region. And it's not just a geographical coincidence. The key is the warm climate that encompasses this region, providing a conducive environment for these deadly creatures to thrive and terrorize the waters. The warm climate fosters a rich biodiversity, and perhaps a training ground for nature's most creatively deadly tools to evolve. By the way, take a look at this map of coral reefs. Either you're blind, or you're making the same surprised face as I did when I saw this map. Nearly 92% of all coral reefs are in the Indo-Pacific region. The tapestry of marine life woven here is as deadly as it is fabulously beautiful. Let's take sharks as an example while we dive into the warm waters of the Indo-Pacific, shall we? To your right, a majestic great white shark glides silently among the corals, a master of ambush who finds abundant food and shelter from storms in the reefs. It's not just a predator, it's the apex, the king of the reefs. Sharks are like regulators, keeping prey populations in check and preventing hungry herbivores like turtles from chomping down all the seagrass meadows until there's nothing left. Box jellyfish, on the other hand, come seasonally, following the heat along coral reefs. Summer in Australia is opposite to the northern hemisphere, so they're around Australia from October to May. Then they head north, following warmer temperatures to Indonesia and even India, and vice versa. The stonefish, that rocky chameleon, blends so seamlessly into the coral backdrop that you won't see it until it's too late. Corals are simply the perfect place to hide. Same goes for the cone snail. So these deadly predators aren't there by chance. They're there because coral reefs are oases in the vast and often empty blue desert of the ocean. Reefs are havens of life, offering food and shelter in abundance. But, like a two-sided coin, reefs have two faces. On one side, they're paradises for marine life. On the other, they're battlegrounds where deadly creatures clash and only death is certain. This ain't the Care Bears, it's the aquatic war zone. Where sharks control populations of larger animals, jellyfish consume small organisms helping to control zooplankton populations, and even the venomous stonefish and cone snail have their place in this vast orchestra of life. As for the saltwater crocodile, it tears apart absolutely anything that moves, both land victims and finned prey in the water, especially fish and young sharks, which are abundant in this coral-rich zone. In the Indo-Pacific region, the richness of coral reefs attracts a myriad of predators, each playing its role in maintaining the delicate balance of this complex and precious ecosystem. Alright, now that we've seen the likely reasons why Australia's crawling with ruthless wildlife, it's time to figure out why those crazy Aussies say we're the ones who are off base and that the animals down there aren't all that dangerous, even though, as we've seen, there are quite a few creatures that could end any of us in a matter of minutes. Real Australian figures and comparison with the rest of the world. When in doubt, look for the numbers. For shark attacks, in 2022, there were 108 shark attacks worldwide, including 89 separate direct bites, broken down into 57 unprovoked attacks and 37 provoked ones. That's how these stats are reported, provoked and unprovoked, and the line between the two is as thin as a 4-year-old's patience. I kinda stuttered trying to wrap my head around the difference between provoked and unprovoked, because here's what I gathered. Unprovoked means, for instance, take a swimmer. If he or she is swimming where there were no sharks before, where there are no sharks now, and where no sharks are expected to show up while you're in the water. Basically, it's almost like a shark has to attack you in a hot tub for it to be classified as unprovoked. Now, a provoked attack, on the other hand, is a situation where you knew there were sharks around, and you decided to go in anyway. Or you knew there might be sharks in the vicinity. For example, if you're a spear fisherman chilling underwater, and 20 minutes later a shark sees you and thinks, a snack, and decides to take a bite out of your shoulder, apparently that's considered a provoked attack because you're where you shouldn't be. And it's not the shark's fault, it's entirely yours. Also, even if you're a good Samaritan, you're still the culprit. For example, you see a shark in distress because it's got a hook or something stuck in its mouth, or it's fully trapped in a fishing net and can't escape. If you try to save it and it bites you, it's counted as a provoked attack. You should know that animal rights advocates are always under pressure in Australia because they don't want the population calling for the extermination of all sharks, so they never report the actual attack numbers, only the unprovoked attacks to downplay the magnitude of attacks. They're also pretty strict about what constitutes an unprovoked attack. Basically, lots of unprovoked attacks equals angry Australian folks, which equals sharks getting hammered. But let's get back to our shark-infested waters. Out of those 57 unprovoked attacks, the United States takes the top spot with 41, and Australia comes in second with 9. there's quite a big difference there. You might think, well, it's actually in the US, not in Australia, where sharks are the real menace. But never, and I mean never, let numbers fool you at full glance. Always think twice. Between 2011 and 2020, there were 455 unprovoked attacks in the US, with 7 folks meeting their maker. Compare that to 161 unprovoked attacks in Australia, but 22 fatalities. How come there are 3 times fewer shark attacks in Australia, but these attacks are 3 times more likely to send you to the Shadow Realm? The reason for this stark difference in death tolls explains 2 phenomena in one. First, the US has a population of 300 million people, while Australia is 25 million. So it's pretty logical that more folks get nibbled on in the US waters than in Australian waters. Especially when you consider that even if you only count the folks living along the coasts, there are 121 million Americans coasting along the American shores compared to 22 million Australians on the Aussie coasts. Next up, the higher death toll in Australian waters can be attributed to the type of shark. You see, 96% of all unprovoked attacks in Australia come from the famous trio of great white shark, bull shark, and tiger shark. And if these get you, it's gonna hurt big time. We're talking about the kind of hurt involving unstoppable internal bleeding because they just took your damn leg. Whereas in the United States, you're more likely to get attacked by smaller sharks like the blacktip shark, which, though they can mess you up, aren't big enough to have a high human homicide rate. That explains it. Now, some of you might say, hold on a minute, buddy. You told us that the great white shark, for instance, lives everywhere. But it seems like it's only in the South, in Australia or the southern US typically, that they use their teeth like Grim Reapers on humans. So how come they seem more violent there and not in the tons of other places where they live? Again, it's all about the numbers. The population of great white sharks is simply much larger in the South. And if you overlap the number of humans going for a swim in the sea and the usual hangouts of these sharks, you end up with high attack rates where these zones match up. In the South. Plus, with climate change and the alarming death of coral reefs, great white sharks in Australia and Florida in particular are increasingly pushed closer to the shores to feed, exacerbated by overfishing. As for box jellyfish, the problem with these brainless killers is that they love warmth so much that global warming suits them just fine. They're coming closer to the coasts because they're less and less stopped by coral barriers that are dying with global warming. These jellyfish are hungry and lured by the heat. They're moving closer to the shores where they leave their death-dealing stingers hanging around. Naturally, the more there are, the more innocent victims they catch. Still, since 2006, quote-unquote, only 3 young teens have succumbed. Now, stonefish injure about 30 people each year in Australia as folks step on them, but none have met their maker. As for the cone snail, or Conus Geographus, only 1 death has been reported in Australia in 1935, and 30 in the whole world. But the truth is, in the countries and areas where most victims get stung elsewhere in the Indo-Pacific, there's very little media attention, and it takes a well-funded medical team to dig into the reasons for someone's death in the water. So the number is probably much higher annually, but as for Australia, nothing to report in terms of deaths. When it comes to spiders, no one's had their life taken by the venom of a black widow, funnel web spider, or any Australian spider since 1979, because effective antivenoms exist to treat bites from these crawlers. The only deaths to be sad about, once again, are mainly in parts of the world where access to medical care is complicated. Now, for those who are snake-phobic, that's 7 one-way tickets to the sky courtesy of snake venom in Australia since 2020. That's 7 folks who met Mother Nature, including 6 adults who were just minding their own business when they all got repeatedly bitten by highly venomous snakes. By the way, 6 out of 7 were taken down by the same species, the brown snake. But once again, take a deep breath and look at the big picture. According to the World Health Organization, 5 million people each year get a snake bite on the ankle, with around 100,000 people kicking the bucket every year. 100,000 worldwide per year compared to 7 in Australia in 3 years. So the real truth, on a broader scale, isn't that Australia's snakes are out to get you, but rather that venomous snakes in general are extremely dangerous, especially in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where most of these deadly encounters occur. Again, it's where there are very few antivenoms and medical care available, unlike in Australia or the United States. As for other land animals, kangaroos, unless it's an immensely rare case, only send humans to the graveyard on the road. Like a deer and other wild hogs elsewhere in the world, kangaroos cross roads at night and unfortunately collide with vehicles, especially motorcycles, and it's basically like crashing into a pole. Platypuses have never killed humans, or at least no cases have been recorded. And cassowaries, while ultra-aggressive with disrespectful humans who get too close, have only caused the writing of the death certificate of 3 humans. The last one in 2019 was a 75-year-old dude who raised a cassowary only to get stomped on and shredded by it. Some might call it tragic, others might invoke karma and natural selection. Conclusion. So, as we've seen, Australia is populated by animals that can be extremely dangerous and deadly to humans. Obviously, when we talk about deadly animals, we're really only considering human mortality. An animal might have no trouble taking out a dog's life, but we won't label it as a dangerous animal if its attacks are harmless to humans. And if Australians don't consider the island's animals all that dangerous, it seems to me it's because they believe an animal isn't dangerous if there's something that can be done to prevent our death from the attack. Funnel web spiders, desert taipans, box jellyfish, they're all lethal to humans. But because Australia is equipped with a high-level medical field and prevention system, deaths are rare, and Australians tend to take these threats lightly. But it's certain that when they point out that there are just as many, if not more, dangerous animals elsewhere in the world, we can only confirm that for populations in Indonesia, the Amazon, or Asia, their relationship with their own venomous wildlife is entirely different, because an attack by these creatures often leads to certain death. So, it's a battle of opinions. What would you prefer? Being in the Amazon jungle facing a wandering Brazilian spider that can bite you without an antivenom being available quickly enough? Or being bitten in Australia by a funnel web spider and being sure to stay alive through the swift administration of antivenom? For Australians, that's why they think animals from other continents are much more dangerous than those that inhabit Australian lands. But of course, for other people who are comfortably at home without having to check their shoes before putting them on, Australian wildlife seems like a nightmare. But is it really more of a nightmare than elsewhere? I think I've provided you with the tools to form your own informed opinion. Well, that's it from me. Subscribe if you learned anything.